Hi everyone, our today's lesson will continue to tackle the first skill, central ideas and details in the domain information and idea of the reading and writing section. If you haven't finished the first part, lesson 8, go back and check it out to have a complete picture of how to solve the most common reading question in the SAT. Let's look at the question first. The central details questions don't have the same wording like the central ideas ones, but they are still very distinguishable. Usually, you are asked to find what is true about one specific detail based on the text. In this example, we want to know about the detail study conducted by Cornell researchers. A very common approach would be to scan the passage for the information about the Cornell study, which is mentioned in the last sentence, and then focus on the information after the word shows. Read this sentence carefully, and you will find the key information. The Cornell study involved cultured human cells in a laboratory. The word cultured and the hint in the laboratory indicate that they are not actual human bodies. Now we have to find an answer that reflects this information. Usually, the correct answer will be a paraphrase of this information. So, before scanning the answer choice, try to paraphrase this information on your own. So we can say that the Cornell study used synthetic cells, or there is no actual human involved in the Cornell study, or it's purely conducted in the lab with no real testing human. This little pause to paraphrase will help you understand this information better using your own words, which will make eliminating the wrong answers easier. Now let's look at the answer choices. Try to also paraphrase the answer so you can ensure your understanding on your own terms. Answer A says that this study is done on a range of species, which can be paraphrased as the study is tested on different animals, insects, etc. This is actually the methodology of earlier studies mentioned right above the sentence. So it's not true for the Cornell study. This is a classic SAT trick in which they give you the right information mentioned in the text, but not necessarily for the right subject or topic being asked. That's why locating the keyword and the right information related to it is the first step here. Answer B is another type of trick answer. It presents an entirely new information not found in the passage. It is tempting for many students who are not good at reading comprehension or having weak English vocabulary, because we saw tests on animals in the previous sentence and the Cornell study being tested on cultured human cells, which indicates something about humans if you do not understand the meaning of the word, and they see both mentioned in this answer. This is an incorrect relationship of the two studies, and also not the right inference, since we only know that the Cornell study shows the potential existence of this retrovirus on both animals and humans, not necessarily how they behave in human bodies. That's why answer C is the exact answer here. Notice how our own paraphrase can be slightly different than the actual answer. This is completely normal because wordings cannot match exactly, but the information is still correct because the paraphrasing is the key skill of this type of question. You should be comfortable paraphrasing the information from the text as well as the answer to see the same essential information. Answer D has the same tricking way of answer B. They give you two keywords that are mentioned in the passage: ancient viral DNA and the modern humans. We see that this is mentioned at the beginning, where some DNA back in the ancient infection can protect modern day viruses, meaning sure they must still be in modern human bodies. But this viral DNA works as an immune system to protect against modern viruses, which is not what this answer is talking about. It means some ancient viruses are still bad for modern humans, a completely different meaning. Again, this answer demonstrates how looking for keywords alone is not enough for this question. You must be able to paraphrase the entire answer choice and the given information to understand the relationship of those keywords. Let's look at a fiction passage example where paraphrasing can be a bit more difficult. To answer this question, focus on the portion of the passage where Catherine is introduced. What do we learn about her and her family here? That the Morlands were in general very plain, that is, unattractive or dull looking, and that Catherine was as plain as her family. Fiction passage usually gives more figurative information, which can be more challenging for non-English speaker students to fully grasp the meaning. But the SAT usually provides more than enough information for test takers to make an educated guess, like how we see the appearance of Catherine Morland is described here. She has awkward figure, a sallow skin without color. Don't dive too much into the exact meaning of this description. Just get the essential paraphrase that she has a very normal, bland, unremarkable, easy to forget look, which corresponds directly to answer A. More advanced central details questions are simply hard to paraphrase text and answer. In this example, we are asked about sustained stress, which right from the get-go, you must be able to paraphrase it to chronic stress to match the information in the text. We do see sustained stress mentioned in Sapolsky's study, saying that there is a specific hormone that was helpful in stressful moments can be deleterious when stress is sustained. Again, this is already a paraphrase of the second sentence, which as a more advanced test takers, you are expected to excel while scanning for sustained stress information. It is helpful to combine some of our previous skills in the writing section, like the reference or parallel universe skill in lesson 1, to help you connect the dot in a complicated passage like this. One of these hormones here are references of these hormones. So this third sentence is essentially a paraphrase of the second one, giving you more understanding of Sapolsky's findings. We see that if these hormones, which are produced during stressful moments, are sustained or giving chronic exposure, can have insidious or harmful, evil, just like deleterious, in which it makes our brain difficult to deal with stress. Still too convoluted? Let's jot it down here. We know that stress causes these hormones to release, like cortisol here, but to chronic exposure or sustained of these hormones or sustained stress makes it hard to shut it down. Translate into simple language, the longer a person experiences chronic stress, the harder it gets for them to stop being stressed. The stress becomes progressively harder to reduce, which is answer C. A is directly contradicted by the passage, which indicates that chronic stress results in chronic exposure of cortisol. And B is incorrect because excitement is not mentioned in the passage at all. Be careful with D. The passage does state that the stress once helped our ancestors avoid becoming thinner. However, that refers to the benefit of these hormones only during stressful moments, not in sustained stress. Again, that leaves C as the answer. This is one of the trickier, more advanced questions because the paraphrasing of the text on its own is difficult to get the right information, let alone the answer paraphrases it once again. The only way to excel at this paraphrasing skill is through a lot of practice. Let's put it all together with some examples here. Feel free to pause and try to solve it on your own first before watching the explanation. What key information is given about my day? A newspaper column written by the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. It has an impressive frequency, which is 6 days a week for more than 20 years. It also extends her influence immeasurably, which means the column makes her very popular. That makes B correct. A is incorrect because the passage states that My Day outlasted Roosevelt's time as First Lady, but not that it overshadowed her achievement in that role. C does not fit because the passage emphasized the wide reach of My Day, which is covered in 90 newspapers, but does not explicitly indicate that it was among the most widely read columns. D does not work either because the passage refers only to the sheer frequency of My Day's publication, but does not make comparisons to any other column. Okay, example 2 asks about details of not just one object, but specifically the detail that differentiate it from something else. So the key is to look for sentences where wheres and dams are compared to the other, which is the last two sentences here. We see that 1. The wheres do not halt or stop the water, nor create pools like the dams. And 2. The wheres depend on continuous motion of water to help cooperate between built and natural world. The second information about the reliance on water's continuous motion can be paraphrased to answer C. They relied on water's existing movement. A and B are contradicted by the passage, which states that wheres altered the landscape around them in distinct way and that they did not halt the flow of the river. Be careful with D. The passage states only that where's effects were distinct, not that they were unpredictable. Okay, this question asks about the effect of the intervention or reading the diary of a person in another country on participants. We can quickly get what this intervention is about from the first sentence, but we need to know the result of it. This is stated in the last two sentences, which the researchers found that this strategy reduced cultural distance, make people more empathetic and understanding towards the other. The paraphrase, however, is rather tricky because reducing cultural distance also means people perceiving a foreigner to be less foreign and more familiar to their own culture. This is what A says, which is promote perceptions of similarity. B incorrectly concerns citizens of the same country, whereas the findings involved citizens of different countries. Note that you can eliminate this answer for that reason, even if you do not really know what antipathy means. It means dislike. C is incorrect because reading the diaries only caused participants to perceive people in the other country as more ethical. The passage does not state whether or not it affects their own behavior. And similarly, D is incorrect because the passage makes no mention of how participants' perception of their own cultures changed. Don't be afraid of poetry questions. They contain more metaphorical images than science paragraphs, but the technique to solve is similar. We are asked to find the detail that differentiate youth and the autumn of life. We don't really see any direct mention of youth in the poem, but autumn is mentioned at the end. Life may renew the autumn time, but never more the May. So we know one thing about autumn, which is it is renewable. We might be unsure if the May directly refers to youth, but there is definitely a contrast between the May and the autumn. So it's safe to say that May is the metaphor for youth and it is not able to be renewed like autumn. This can be paraphrased as the answer B. It cannot be extended. The why question is one of the harder and more confusing one since you are asked to look for explanation or the context, not just the detailed description. With the what question, you can quickly scan for the keyword or the paraphrase of it, but the why question may require you to read around the sentence containing the keyword to understand the context. Here, you are asked to find the reason behind the undersea volcano's development. This can be found in the keyword result in a volcano at the end. So what exactly result in a volcano? The collisions of two plates, which is a reference to the previously mentioned phrase, shifting tectonic plates. See how we have to read so far back? Now, we see that this collision, or this shift, pull the ocean floor apart, which makes molten rock rise to fill the gap. So this is the previous reference of volcano. This happened in the ocean floor, which is why the question asked about the undersea volcanoes. It's a paraphrase. We can quickly jot down the relationship here to make it clear. Plates collide or shift leads to ocean floor pull apart, leads to molten rock rise to the surface, or this is undersea volcanoes. We can see that answer A perfectly encapsulates this relationship. See how B, C, and D all mention the right keywords, but wrong relationship? They all contain something about the collision, the floor pulling apart, or tectonic plates, but they trick you by giving the wrong paraphrase. So be careful with that. We can use the same elimination technique for this question. A indicates that Algernon is embarrassed, but in his response, he seems to be proud of his skill. He plays with wonderful expression, and sentiment is my forte. So it's incorrect. He also says that he uses emotion to play piano, not science, so C is contradicted. D is also incorrect because he claims that he doesn't play for accuracy, and anyone can do it, so it's not his wish. B is the only correct one because he is uninterested in playing the piano accurately, which can be paraphrased to not caring about technical correctness, and his pride in playing with wonderful expression and sentiment is his forte means he cares more about emotion than accuracy. This is the end of today's lesson. Paraphrasing is the main skill to ace the central details questions, and you can practice to master this skill by doing the homework and the quiz of lesson 9, as well as challenge yourself with harder questions in the domain practice feature.